You were never supposed to open that door.
Why?
Because if you ever saw what was inside, you'd finally know why I let them believe you weren't my daughter.
The lawyer didn't open the will first. He opened a folder, old, worn at the corners, like it had been handled 1,000 times in private and never once in front of us. "Before I read anything," he said, "there's something your family has believed for 26 years. And it isn't true." My brother laughed. Not nervously, confidently, the laugh of a man who already knew how this room was supposed to end. I didn't laugh. I'd spent my whole life being told I wasn't really my father's daughter. Told quietly, in the way families tell you things they don't want written down. And now, 3 weeks after burying him, a stranger in a gray suit was about to tell me why. Subscribe to Whispered Truths, and let's uncover the truth. I had the house, the tutors, the name on the mailbox. What I didn't have was a place at the family table when it mattered. I wasn't in the company photos. I wasn't introduced at the holiday parties where my father shook hands with senators and studio heads. My half-brother stood beside him in every one of them. But on Sunday nights, my father called. Just me. 20 minutes, sometimes longer. He asked about school, about a book I was reading. Nothing important, except it was the only hour I felt like his daughter instead of his obligation. He left me notes sometimes, folded once, tucked into a book, never signed. I used to think that was just how he was, careful, distant, a man who loved from a safe distance. I didn't understand, back then, that the distance was a decision, not his nature. There was a room in our house I was never allowed into. My father called it his office, but it was locked even when he wasn't home. Once, when I was 12, I asked why. He looked at me for a long moment and said, "One day, you'll understand why I let them believe it, and why I couldn't say it sooner." I thought he was talking about the office. He wasn't. There was an envelope, too. I saw it exactly once, the year I turned 16, when my stepmother waved it at me during an argument I wasn't supposed to overhear. A DNA test. The reason, she said, I would never really belong to this family. I believed her. I had no reason not to. What I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that the test hadn't come from a hospital at all. It had come from a private attorney, my uncle's attorney. Back at the reading, the lawyer set a second envelope on the table, next to the first. My brother's jaw tightened. He wanted the will read. He did not want to talk about tests. "Your father added a condition before he died," the lawyer said. "Nothing is distributed until the original sample is independently retested." My brother said it was unnecessary. He said it twice. And for a man who claimed to have nothing to hide, he looked very much like a man who did. The lawyer had the result the entire time. He'd been carrying it into that room like a verdict. I am my father's biological daughter. I always was. The test that convinced an entire family otherwise, the test that shaped every quiet exclusion, every photograph I wasn't in, was falsified 26 years ago, by my uncle. The same uncle who, for 2 decades, sat on our company's board, controlling the legal division and the money that ran through it. My father found out years ago. He knew, and he said nothing. For a moment, sitting in that room, I hated him for it. 26 years is a long time to let a child believe she wasn't wanted, when the truth was sitting in a drawer somewhere the entire time. But the lawyer kept talking, and its shape began to change. My uncle hadn't just forged a test. He'd built his position on it, a clause buried in the company's founding documents that let him seize control the moment any instability in succession went public. If my father had exposed the fraud the day he discovered it, my uncle could have used it to take the company, and used me, a teenager who understood none of it, as leverage. My father didn't have proof strong enough to win that fight yet, so instead, quietly, he began moving what would become my real inheritance into a trust my uncle could never touch. It took years, and it had to look like nothing was happening. If I had known the truth too soon, if I'd confronted my uncle, or simply said the wrong thing to the wrong person, I could have unraveled everything before it was safe. His silence wasn't rejection. It was the only protection he knew how to give me, though understanding that doesn't undo the 26 years I spent believing I was unwanted. My brother had gone very quiet. He'd known pieces of it for a long time. He'd overheard our uncle, years ago, boasting that the whole company sat on that one falsified test. He hadn't understood what it meant until he was older, and by then, he'd already signed something he hadn't read closely enough, something that tied him quietly to the fraud he wished he'd never learned about. "I didn't do it for the money," he said. "I did it because I was already part of it before I understood what it was." I believed him. That was almost worse. The will's final instruction was simple. The controlling shares of the company were going to me. And there was one condition. The evidence my father had spent decades collecting, the forged test, the truth about my uncle, was mine to do with as I chose. Expose it, or let it stay buried with the man who wrote it. The locked office was finally opened. It wasn't a hiding place. It was an archive. Every report card, every photograph I didn't know he'd kept, every unsigned note, dated, going back to when I was a child. Proof that he'd been watching over my entire life from a distance he never once let me see. He never signed them Dad. Now I understood why. Even his handwriting could have been used as evidence against us both. I spent 26 years believing my father didn't want me. He spent those same 26 years making sure I would survive whatever came after he was gone. I chose not to expose it, because I finally had the one thing I'd never had before, the truth. In his own handwriting, proving exactly who I was to him the entire time. If you were in my position, would you have forgiven them, or told the world the truth? If stories like this stay with you, subscribe to Whispered Truths.